Welcome, um, viewers of the New Zealand Reporter. Thank you for coming in, and thank you today to our guest on the show, who is Andrew Holden of the News Publishers Association. Welcome on, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, and hello to everybody.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be about the current situation that the media in New Zealand finds itself. We're going to be looking back, we're going to be looking forward, and looking at those probably very crucial decisions the governments have to make around whether to legislate to support the media industry. It's kind of strange, those words coming out of my mouth, the idea of supporting media, but that's where we seem to be at this point in time. So Andrew, let's just get straight into it. Could you explain to the audience where, in terms of confidence, what is the feeling amongst the New Zealand media at this point in time?
The feeling at the moment is almost one of despair, to be honest. 2024 has been a really tough year. There's been significant loss of journalism jobs in New Zealand. We've seen the second major television news program, TV3, shut down its entire newsroom. And now the bulletin is being done by Stuff, which is an old newspaper / online company, is now producing a 1 hour bulletin for that television station. We've seen magazines shut down. We've seen community newspapers go into hiatus. We've even seen digital-only outfits like Spin-Off desperately put out their hand for people to support them because they're right on the edge too. So financially, the industry is in extremely difficult circumstances. That's partly, so I'm sure we're going to talk about the structure of the media market at the moment, but also New Zealand's technically in recession. So it's a very difficult trading period in New Zealand at the moment. The economy is not particularly healthy, and that, of course, affects every business, including media.
In terms of job losses, at this point in time, how many people have lost their jobs in, say, the last 12 months? Do you have a grasp of that?
I would say it will be in around 250 probably. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly. Somebody, I'm sure, will do the count up fairly soon. But the TV3 newsroom was around 50 odd full-time journalists, but then you've got a whole lot of other people tied to that, a lot of support staff. And there've been, significant job losses anywhere. So, I mean, in broad terms, New Zealand has probably seen the number of its journalists decrease over the past decade from, let's say, in the order of 4,000 to 5,000 to probably 1,500 now. So it's an industry that's been under extreme stress.
Where are those people going, and can they be clawed back?
Clawing them back's possible. I mean, so a lot of them will move on to different careers. A lot of them will try and get communications jobs, obviously. They'll move offshore, like a lot of other people, if they can't find job opportunities here. They'll retrain themselves into different kind of careers. I think one of the more troubling impacts, if you like, is for anybody coming out of high school. Why would they want to do a journalism degree and trying to get into journalism if all they can see is people losing their jobs and the whole industry contracting? So what you're losing is that generational re-energization, if you like, new people coming in, bringing in new ideas and new skill sets and new backgrounds. And, because it's a pretty bleak world if you want to be a journalist to try and get into.
So, Andrew, let's pause, and we'll just, if you like, for a moment, to introduce yourself and the NPA, and what does the NPA do, and why has its role become, perhaps, so crucial at this point in time?
So the NPA is the industry body for the owners of what fundamentally were newspapers in New Zealand. So if you think of the union representing the workers, the NPA represents the owners. It's well over 100 years old, founded by the owners of newspapers all around New Zealand. Its predominant role has been in the past, it's like an advertising agency in many respects. So if you're a Toyota and you want to do a $5 million campaign and you want to get to every newspaper in New Zealand, but there might be 15 different owners of those, you don't want to have to ring up each one and try and do a deal, right? So what you do is you come to the NPA, you say, this is my budget. I want to hit every newspaper in New Zealand. you guys, here's the material, you arrange the booking, and then I'll pay you the money, and you distribute it to those newspapers according to the value they're
A
entitled to. So
little
that's
bit like booking.com or something, one of those almost like a hotel sort of place. You come along and you want to know what's on offer, and so you come into you guys and yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. And so that's kind of where it came from, because any talking to go to an advertising agency, but again the NPA, because New Zealand's had a historically had a really strong, diverse ownership of newspapers across all the different regions. It's only recently where it's contracted into two or three. It just made it easier for people to be able to go to one place and book it right across the board and let them do the details. So that's fundamentally what the Newspaper Publishers Association's been. It runs the media awards and has done for decades for the newspapers. So the Voyager Media Awards are run by it. It supports the New Zealand Media Council as well with administration. So there's a couple of other little bits and pieces that are added to it. And now, of course, one of its roles is advocacy on behalf of the industry.
So is this a new thing? This advocacy aspect, is it sort of been forced to sort of shift, pivot in this situation, or is this something it's been doing for a long time?
No, it is. I mean, if you're the owner of a media company, you've got an ability to talk to prime ministers and politicians pretty regularly. But I came on board just over 12 months ago as their public affairs director, which means communications and advocacy. I'm a journalist originally from Australia, a journalist for about 35 years, and I've now got a dog barking at the door, which I'll try and get somebody else to get rid of.
Yeah.
So, probably 12 months ago, they realized normally what happens is the chair of the NPA, who's one of those media owners, will be the spokesperson. But they realized there was so much going on in the industry at the moment, they needed somebody to come on and be able to respond very quickly to media requests like this one, chat about what's happening in the media.
Yeah, Andrew, if we go back to the situation, you've described the situation that we find ourselves in, and you touched on about the structure, and that seems to be an issue. Tell us about the structure and how it's changed and why that's important.
So the key change in the past 20 to 30 years has obviously been the growth of the internet. That's not a surprise to anybody, right? And how it's changed business models for everybody. The interesting thing for a lot of media companies is when it was first launched in the early 90s with that wonderful philosophy of information should be available to everybody. It's this world's encyclopedia. The vast majority of media companies loved that concept, and so they started putting the news up on websites for free. Nobody ever thought of charging for it under that basic principle. So what that did was it created in the community's mind this sense that news is free. I don't have to go and buy a newspaper or whatever it might be to find it out. I just go on the web and there it is. So that was kind of one thing. It started to change the community's thinking about news and how available it should be for me and what I need to do to get hold of it. The other key element, obviously, is then advertising moved online. The likes of Trade Me in New Zealand, eBay around the world, but then you go into classified websites for real estate or cars or what have you, fundamentally changed the game, right? Because newspapers, particularly on the weekend, used to make an absolute mozza out of the classified advertising. All that moved online. So that's where the main game's being played. And the same with display advertising. When you think of your big advertisements in the front page of a newspaper or on television, predominantly that's gone online. So, that's a pretty well-known, understood kind of change. What's really fundamentally changed in the past 10 years is that the companies that developed the technology around booking advertisements, paying for advertisements and getting them onto websites or what have you, have been bought up by Google. So Google now has a monopoly on the digital advertising technology. And what that means is it can game the system, if you like, in terms of it's an auction system. So if I'm the owner of the New Zealand Herald website and I want to sell my ads on my homepage, I go through this technology owned by Google. I pitch it to be bought by people. Google in the background are controlling the value of that auction. And what that means is that they can get more value for advertisements on the Google homepage than the New Zealand Herald can with theirs. Plus, of course, because they own it, they clip the ticket. So what that means is that the vast majority of advertising in New Zealand now goes to the big tech companies, Google in terms of search, and then Meta owning Facebook in terms of social media. And so it's that drain of revenue away from the media companies that's causing this crisis. And without revenue, you can't keep paying journalists. You certainly can't hire any more journalists. So that's kind of where we've got to, is this position of crisis. It's not a question of media companies not being able to adapt their models because they do extraordinary things online. It's the fact that the advertising market is broken